everyone. Welcome to Work Love Wednesday. Samm and Smelter here for Work Love Wednesday. It is time for Work Love Wednesday. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Work Love Wednesday. It is 10:36. I'm 6 minutes late because I accidentally unplugged the computer. I was ready to go live, and then I accidentally unplugged the computer. Now that I'm on camera, I'm seeing my bow, and it looks a little ridiculous, so excuse me while I try to adjust this. Anyways. So happy Wednesday. If you're hopping on, I know we're a little early today because I have appointments once again starting at 11. Eventually I am going to sort through this whole calendar and be able to be on time routinely and not change the time. But once again, and I had mentioned this in the past, that I am all about wanting to ensure that I don't make excuses for myself, that I'm just there in it. And if we're going to do Work Love Wednesday, we're going to do Work Love Wednesday, which is what we are doing. So today, if you saw in the title, it talks about this concept of being surrounded by intentionality. And I think this topic today comes from a belief system that might be a necessary belief system for our growth, and to really absorb what's happening around us. But, you'll be able to share those thoughts with me as we continue through this conversation today. But I want to talk to you about how I kind of gotten awakened to this lesson that was occurring, because it's very, very random. And I was actually thinking about school buses and bus drivers. And so randomly, I was reflecting back on my bus driver when I first moved to Pennsylvania and who she was and how she made me feel comfortable. Sorry if you hear lawn work outside, but made me feel comfortable getting on the bus, because I just sit there as an introvert and I analyze everything, thinking about this concept of, going out your home, getting into a car with basically a stranger for the most part, and then trusting that person's going to get you to school. And, those thoughts never really crossed my mind when I was younger. But I also know that, that bus driver could have been anybody. And so is there a reason why that was my bus driver? And then even thinking about it from my girls' perspectives and their bus drivers, because there's a very interesting dynamic that has happened this year because my oldest has transferred schools. So the bus that she's ridden since kindergarten is no longer her bus. She's on a different bus with a different bus driver. But the bus driver that she's had for those first 3 years comes by pretty much like 5 minutes before Maddie's new bus comes. And she's always waving and she's always honking. If Maddie happens to get off the bus sooner, there's this relationship and this rapport that's there. And I think I kind of took for granted how comfortable even that bus driver made me feel that my child was in good hands. And now that we have our current bus driver, who is dealing with the handful that Zoe is, but doing so in a fashion that Zoe still feels comfortable getting on the bus, it just made me sit there and think, even something as simple as who that relationship and dynamic is going to be with my bus driver at my period of time in my life for this time for my girls is intentional. So whatever you believe is the bigger picture, whether you think of divine connection, if you want to make it spiritual, religious, if you just think of universe or you think of karma, however you put that into perspective, thinking that even something that small, something that is probably not on my radar as I'm moving through life, is intentional. And that makes it even more specific when we start thinking about like when somebody holds the door open for us or they don't. And so we always have this conversation, especially when I worked in the retail arena. I shouldn't even say that. Anywhere that I've worked where it's a service related industry and customers are important, when we talked about those little moments that you're with a customer, you don't know what ripples you're sending in the grand scheme of things in their world. So no, you don't have this incredible change your life connection that happens. But when you decide to greet them or not greet them in that day, in that moment, in the grand context of what's going on in their life, there's an intentionality behind it. And I can even make arguments that why you choose to say hi or not hi in those moments is part of the lesson that that individual has to learn. I mean, those environments and dynamics are happening and put into play so that individual can grow. And we've talked about this time and time again, where, I believe that our life is preparing us for what we're truly made to do, what we're truly called, what our connected path is. However, most of us don't want to learn the lessons, and so we get trapped in these cycles. But at the end of the day, it is this elaborate orchestration of life and experiences around us that are causing us to learn. So I talked about this bus, talk about bus drivers and it being intentional from a school bus element. And now that was my random thought that I had in regards to this true lesson that's coming alive for me this week. So planting this seed about this idea of intentionality surrounding us and encompassing us, and almost kind of like this warm, loving hug of that no matter what I'm experiencing, it's for me to be better, to make me stronger. And we say things like that to each other every time that life gets hard, that, if it doesn't kill you, it's going to make you stronger. You're going to grow, you're going to evolve. It doesn't mean that there's not going to be something more challenging down the path, because it is. It's always going to be, when we're on this path of growth, struggle is always going to be present. As we want to push ourselves and make ourselves better, we can expect, hanging out in a place of comfort permanently stops growth, and also leads us to a place where we're likely to disconnect from our intentions and our connected path, and then become unfulfilled, lose sight of joy. So for me, this past weekend, I just went for my third training session in medical Qigong. So I'm over halfway now to getting my practitioner level 1 certificate. And anyone who is watching, who has been part of helping making that happen, helping me get my hours in, allowing me to practice, being open, and allowing me to share, because sharing is such a big part of the learning process. I am so grateful for you. But that's not the point of today, even though gratitude is always important. So taking that quick moment. But one of the things that happens as I've been studying on this path, and not just starting with Qigong, I think it started since I've kind of been going down this non-traditional path of embracing being sensitive, understanding what it means, and finding myself in a lot of different learning environments that I wouldn't say are comfortable. And a lot of this, I should say not a lot, but most of it is all me, in the fact that I enter those spaces, I think, almost intentionally believing that I am an outsider. So regardless of whatever anyone else's interactions are, I go in there feeling like I'm an outsider. And so I interpret that all the actions that happen in that space are proving that I am an outsider and that I don't belong. And that's also part of my own personal path of growth and being in this place of discomfort, which, always, it's like a reassurance to me that I am on the right path, that I am going through large amounts of growth, and that's what I want to be doing. So that that is a good aspect to this. But when I started to back up and look at it from this concept, revisiting these feelings of feeling like an outsider, of feeling like I don't belong, and having this kind of weird internal battle that's happening in my brain, with the other side that's saying that I really love and I want to be a sponge and absorb as much as possible. And so it's trying to stay in that state of wanting to absorb as much as possible, but then having this other little voice, which we can make arguments that it's ego or small self, saying, who are you to be here? You don't belong here. What do you think you're doing? You don't even make any sense. Is this stuff even real? But it takes away, it detracts from my ability to be fully present and be a sponge and take in what we learn in a 4-day immersive, intense session. Because then we go away from each other. I'll go back in November. But then there's these long breaks where we don't have this learning environment with my peers and my teacher, even though they're all still a phone call away, but it's just not the same. But when I started to look at it, I started to realize, especially from this past weekend, how intentional that learning space is for me. And this has been the trend. If I look back in all these learning places that I've been going that have a large amount of discomfort with me entering in with the expectation that I'm going to be an outsider and not belong, that the dynamics that are put into play in those spaces are actually meant so that I can be set up with the greatest likelihood of success. So there is a support and a love that's there. So one of the biggest examples of this, I would say, is my teacher. So my teacher, Ted O'Brien, out of Gettysburg. So if you're looking, I highly recommend. But through my pathway, I was led to Ted, recommended to go to Ted for medical Qigong, which I did not even know what it was at that time. I read, Ted has a book, and I'll actually put a link to that in the show notes. So I was led to that book, read that book. And if you even just look for Ted O'Brien, look him up. He is a Caucasian male, like 6'4", tall guy, plays basketball. Not what I would have expected when I found myself being pulled in the direction of traditional Chinese medicine and who my teacher would be. But taking it back a couple of steps, thinking that if I got who I was imagining I would have for my teacher, I think that I would have been a little too uncomfortable. I'm already in a state of constant discomfort. I feel like when I go to class, I'm usually very, very nervous. And it's, I find myself, I know that I'm nervous because even when I'm talking to people, I get so excited that my breathing is off. Just like when you're nervous in scenarios, like think about a really awkward networking event happening over a 4-day immersive experience of 8 or 9 hours a day. And that's kind of how I feel. So thinking about if I separated even my teacher for someone who I would, I guess, stereotypically expect in my mindset, I think I would have been just so uncomfortable that I don't know if I would be continuing on with my journey. And so the right teacher being presented with their teaching style and their approach, being able to create a relationship that makes me feel safe so that I can continue, because otherwise I don't know if I would have gotten to the point where I am so passionate and committed to this process. But then even taking it one step further and looking at those who are in the class with me. So there's a very big diverse group, different backgrounds, different age groups. And I have these really beautiful opportunities every time that I go during these 4-day weekends to connect with somebody on an individual basis during lunch or during break or at the end of class. And all of them have served a purpose of helping with this stage of discomfort or helping me with my growth. In fact, all of them that I have met have helped to remove blocks or obstacles that my ego puts up. And in the moments where I am over analyzing actions and coming to a conclusion that I'm an outsider and I don't belong there, it's very quick that the next break or opportunity that presents itself where someone can interact with me, they say exactly what needs to be said or have the conversation that needs to be happening for me to know that I do have a space there and there is a reason why I'm there. And so these dynamics are at play all the time. One of the things that my teacher reiterated this weekend is taking accountability for basically everything you can in every situation. Even in some very abstract scenario where you can make arguments that it's just karma coming in to bite you, own what you can own and not putting yourself in a victim mentality, because we're in this victim mentality. We're basically at a vulnerable state where people can take advantage of us. In the world of energetic medicine, they can just drain our energy and our boundaries fall by the wayside. And so it's really important that you not only accept yourself, but accept accountability for everything that is around you. And so I think that is potentially the biggest disconnect when it's coming to this concept of being surrounded by intentionality, is that we don't want to own that maybe all of these people are intentionally placed there to create the dynamics that are at play to ultimately facilitate a learning experience that I need to move to where I want to go. All of us have goals, all of us have dreams, and sometimes we wonder why they are feeling like they're stagnant, that they're not going anywhere. Yet at the same time, I find that in those situations, we have some really difficult or struggles or situations that are around us that we don't want to own or live up to. We kind of fall into the victim aspect. And when I'm talking about this, I'm not talking about there's always going to be scenarios of deep-rooted trauma, of really awful things that have happened. In fact, today's September 11th. So thinking about what happened in our country on September 11th, I mean, that's an awful, awful thing. When I'm talking about struggles and obstacles and difficulties, I'm talking about it from a perspective of, there's a relationship dynamic or conflict that I don't want to navigate in the workplace. Like I just don't get along with a certain coworker. I'm not happy at my job. Anywhere where there's negative or stagnant energy that we want to just be victim to and saying, because this is here, I'm suffering, rather than owning what I can own. And I think the job piece is really a really great point, because when we're sitting there thinking about, I'm not happy in my job, I want to be doing XYZ, there's so much fear that's associated with that transition, rightfully so, because there's so many things linked to our professional vocations. I mean, it's our livelihood, and we have families to take care of potentially, we have to pay our bills, and we have to be able to live. And so it's not as easy as just leaving whatever we're doing and going on and pursuing our dreams. We don't all have that opportunity. Yet you have to ask yourself, if I am so miserable where I'm at, and this is not the path that I wanted, am I just going to stay here and be stagnant and be miserable, or is there a way that I can start transitioning that? So I want to know how this resonates on you. So when you're thinking about being surrounded by intentionality, do you believe that? Do you think that belief is necessary for your growth to happen from the life experiences? Is there an example that just kind of randomly popped up to you, like my whole bus driver kind of scenario? Do you feel like right now you're surrounded by intentionality? Does that give you a new sense of calmness and peace? I mean, I think that's what kind of really happened for me, is when I started to put these pieces together and thought about this being surrounded by intentionality, that everything is intentionally being put in place for my growth. I felt this new sense of calm, a new sense of peace, a new sense of assurance, and almost allowing me to let my walls down so that I can fully immerse myself in this period of growth. So I'd love to hear how this resonates with you. As always, if you hop on and you're watching, make sure you say hello, even if it's at a later time, because it never tells me how many. I only see, it doesn't tell me who, it only tells me how many of you are watching. And as always, if you want to reach out with any kind of comments that you don't want to post here on the live while I'm pointing, like you guys can see, like this is where the comments are on my screen. Feel free to email me at samm@leadershipisart.com. And then also any other things that come up for you as far as thoughts or topics, which I'm sure are usually resonating with many of you, let me know. And that can be a topic for a future Work Love Wednesday. Other than that, I hope you have a great day. Take some time for reflection. Take some time for reflection and pause, because today is a solemn day for our country. So give yourself grace today, because I know for me, energetically, the day just feels sad in some aspects. But it's a day to remember those who have done some amazing things out of love for our country. And also to extend a heart out to those who caused so much pain for our country. And, you know, for me, I don't like to get spiritual on these things, but just saying a prayer that, you know, those that I don't and will never completely understand why they would do something that would cause so much pain to us. But I think they need prayers too. They need prayers of love and to feel love, because I think violence against violence does not work anything. And love is what is going to move us forward. So spend some time in reflection, spend some time in sending out vibes of love and positive energy to help combat those energies that are not so positive, not so highly vibrational. So